Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round, we are checking out Resident Evil Codename Hunk. Now, obviously, this is not an official entry into the Resident Evil franchise. No, this is a fan-made mod that seeks to recreate the Resident Evil experience within Doom itself, which is, quite frankly, insane. It's not an easy thing to do, and quite obviously takes a lot of time and faffery in a lot of areas that I, quite frankly, don't understand. I'm mostly a Doom mapper. When it comes to crazy stuff like this, a lot of it just whooshes over my head. But the chief influences on display here from the Resident Evil franchise, pretty easy to pick out. We've got the third-person over-the-shoulder perspective from Resident Evil 4 and onwards, but we've got the style of environments and enemies from that initial trilogy, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. Very much sticking to zombies, to lickers, to hunters. You even get an appearance by a few of the tyrants, even Nemesis during the course of this. It feels very much like the creator here is trying to generate his own greatest hits version of Resident Evil. One thing you've got to bear in mind, though, is that at the moment this is pretty much a demo version of the mod. Only one episode is available, and hopefully many more episodes are due to be completed and released in future. So you should pretty much treat this as a taster for what to expect from the rest of Codename Hunk. So, bearing that in mind, you'll find that this mod is actually quite jam-packed in terms of things that you'll encounter. As I've already mentioned, you got zombies, lickers, hunters, Nemesis turns up, you've got dogs to deal with as well, and to be honest, it doesn't really help with the pacing of the mod at all. It's kind of stuck in this awkward limbo where it wants to pay homage to the old survival horror elements where you're rooted to the spot while you've got to aim and fire, but you've got the more action-orientated elements of the third-person camera, the quick-time actions that you can sometimes perform as well, and it doesn't entirely gel together all that well. This situation right here is probably the best example of what I mean with things not quite gelling together, because on one hand, you've got a control scheme that roots you to the ground when you're firing at an enemy, and then you're confronted with this. You've got two enemies that can charge you, they're very agile, they just make a beeline for your face and start slashing the absolute crap out of it. Now, of course, you do have a quick-time dodge prompt to use, but using that is awkward as all hell, especially when you're trying to juggle staying alive. You've got a command to activate your herbs, you've got to do a weird bit of keyboard fuckery to reload your gun, because you've got to be aiming to reload. If you're not aiming, the reload button suddenly becomes the sprint button, and in the heat of battle, that suddenly becomes one giant, unmanageable clusterfuck, especially in a high-energy situation like this one. Believe it or not, you do have access to stun grenades here, and you'd think they'd be quite useful for situations like that one, but truth is, the duration of the stun effect isn't anywhere near long enough for them to actually feel effective. By the time you've thrown that grenade and cycled back to a primary weapon, the stun effect has worn off, and if anything would take the edge off the frustration in dealing with hunters in this mod, it would be a buff to the duration of the stun effect. It would definitely make things ever so slightly more manageable, because as of right now, dealing with hunters just feels like this really huge difficulty spike. It's just a shame those hunter encounters seem to dominate my opinion of this mod so much, because truth is, Codename Hunk does a lot of really impressive stuff, to such a degree that you almost forget that you're playing a Doom mod sometimes. That's how much it transforms the base game, that's how much it nails the Resident Evil vibe. It's just, yeah, those friggin' hunter encounters, they make everything else feel a little bit like a cakewalk. Which ain't that great when you're supposed to be dealing with the unstoppable juggernaut that is Nemesis. I mean, this fight right here feels so much easier in comparison. You've got a lot more room to evade, you got a lot more room to think about what you're doing next, when you need to reload, when you need to heal up, and yeah, I just feel like something needs to be tweaked when it comes to those hunter encounters, because it feels like it's dragging the rest of the mod down as a result. Anyway, let's stop talking about hunters, about how ass-pained I am over them. Let's talk about some of the stuff that I love that this mod does. Firstly, the usage of items and light puzzle elements. So, after you bring down Nemesis, he drops a film reel. Why? Fucked if I know. But anyway, you put the film reel in the projector and it lights up the projector screen, which is in here. And the consequence of that is you pick up a key. That's a really neat, cool little thing that this level, this mod does, but that isn't the end of it. You use that key to get into the church, reunite with your team member, blast a few more zombies, pick up a slide filter, blast a few dogs, and then come back to the projector screen, because when you plug it in, the filter reveals a code which you can plug into a grandfather clock which reveals the entrance to the basement, and all of this is vintage Resident Evil. Even better, the code that you get from the slide filter is different each time. Well, it's been different each time I've played this through, which is twice, and that alone is pretty freaking cool. You know what else is pretty freaking cool? The fact that this mod has a coherent story element running through it. Sure, the voice acting might be a little wonky, the actual story itself might be a little wonky, but let's face it, a Resident Evil story has never been not wonky. Resident Evil, especially in the early days, has never had pitch-perfect voice acting. I mean, who could forget gems like
the Master of Unlocking?
So yeah, in that regard, at least you could say that Codename Hunk here is certainly faithful to the source material. But if there's one major criticism that I've got to bring up about the cutscenes, about the story elements, it's that occasionally they do overpower the mod, they do occasionally take a little bit too much control away from you, and they are, as far as I know, completely unskippable. That would be something that would improve my experience with this mod immeasurably, because as it stands right now, if you want to start this mod from the beginning, you're going to have to sit through that really long intro cinematic all over again. And sometimes you just want to, get down to business and kill some frickin' zombies. But hey, this is still early days, there's room for improvement, room for tweaks, because after all, this is still regarded as a demo version of the full Codename Hunk experience, something that I really do hope to get to play sometime soon. I've no idea what the timescale is for the full version of this, but even with its flaws, even with its frustrations, it still remains a really impressive mod, and a mod that's actually quite fun to play through. That said, make sure you enable mouse look on this one, because without it, you're not going to be able to aim very well at certain things. Oh, you didn't think I was done with this just yet, did you? Oh, hell no. You can play as an entire other character in this mod. You can play as Krauser, and you Resident Evil fans out there will recognize his character from Resident Evil 4. Had a bit of beef with Leon Kennedy, had a bit of a funky thing going on with his arm, and apparently in this mod, he has a little bit of a fondness for jumping out the side of perfectly good helicopters. Seriously. He just goes, whee, out the side. But the whole point of this is, this mission is intended to run parallel with the story of Hunk, which it just seems like a lot of effort to go to, but it's definitely something I remember from the Resident Evil games I used to play, these parallel story missions that you could unlock after you'd completed the other, but this just seems like so much work. I'd personally rather see the full Codename Hunk campaign completed rather than trying to do two separate campaigns at the same time, which seems to be the case here. But anyway, Krauser has a lot of interesting things going on that you can do. You can do quick dodges left and right. You can also use a bow and arrow, which is quite surprisingly effective. And he also has access to his crazy, funky, mutated arm, which allows you to completely obliterate most things in front of you. Another feature of Codename Hunk that I've kind of glossed over is that you can do quick time kills, which is pretty cool. You have to stun zombies and various enemies in order to do it, and it's something that I really didn't have the opportunity to do as Hunk. I was a little too busy trying to stay alive and reload, but Krauser seems to be in a bit of a better situation to pull those kind of things off. The environments you explore as Krauser are very different from the ones you explore as Hunk as well. They're a lot more open, a lot more expansive, and my only real criticism of this area is that you will spend a fair amount of time running around in circles trying to find emblems to unlock doors. One section in particular I found to be a little unpleasant, and that's this one just down here where it's almost pitch black and you get attacked by hunters. And as you know, I already have a bad opinion of hunters, but getting through this just difficulty spike off the chart, frustration factor makes me want to drink heavily, and yeah, definitely something that could be tweaked. Maybe a torch or something, or just dial up the brightness ever so slightly, something. because fighting hunters in here is a pain in the ass. Lord help you if you kick the bucket in that tunnel as well, because unless you've been saving diligently, it's all the way back to the beginning of the mission, and yeah, that's the kind of stuff that generally makes me rage quit. But yeah, in comparison to Hunk's mission, Krauser's is much more actiony, much less focus on puzzles, and much more focus on generally shooting monsters in the face. And to that regard, you definitely seem to get more access to ammunition. You certainly have more guns to play around with. You get a shotgun straight away at the start to go along with the Uzi, the pistol, the bow and arrow, and of course, there's the mutant arm, which is absolutely fantastic with dealing with irritating enemies, especially hunters. I found that quite handy in that darkened tunnel. But when it comes to tyrants, it's also ridiculously effective because one swipe and that's all she wrote. One thing you're going to have to bear in mind with that ability is it's got quite the significant cooldown. I think that was the case in the main Resident Evil games as well, but you can't be wasting it on small fry like zombies. You're going to want to reserve it for irritating enemies like hunters and big kahunas like tyrants. All things considered, I'd say that this is a pretty goddamn awesome addition to Codename Hunk. I mean, it's a second character, it's a second story that runs parallel to the Hunk campaign. That is an utterly nuts thing to have in a Doom version of Resident Evil. I mean, that's something that I keep having to remind myself of, because this genuinely feels like its own game. You constantly forget that you are in fact playing this via Doom. But yeah, would recommend. Definitely going to be keeping an eye on this to see when future missions will be added, and personally I'm hoping that the author behind this decides to focus down on one character instead of doing 2 character campaigns at the same time, because firstly, that is a ridiculous amount of work to give yourself, and secondly, if you focus down on one character, it means that everyone gets to play a full campaign sooner, which I'm sure everyone would love to do. Anyway, I think it's fairly safe to say that a ridiculous amount of talent and effort has gone into the creation of this mod so far, and I am really looking forward to checking out the rest of it whenever it becomes available. If you feel like checking this version out, the link, as usual, is in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future episodes of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.